If I had known how the night would end, I might have sat in my car for another 5 minutes just to breathe. But that's the thing about moments that change everything, you never see them coming. You just step into them unsuspecting, holding a wrapped gift and a polite smile. My name is Sharon Campbell, and this is how the story begins. The engagement party was already in full swing when I arrived at my Aunt Denise's backyard. String lights glowed against the late summer sky, a rented DJ booth pulsed with bass, and guests drifted around holding cocktails like props in a photo shoot. Everything looked curated glossy, perfectly arranged for Instagram. Everything except the seat they saved for me. I should have sensed something was off the moment I reached the gift table. I had spent 2 hours picking out a handmade espresso set from a local boutique because my cousin Nathan once mentioned his fiancée, Vanessa, was a coffee purist. It wasn't extravagant, but it was thoughtful. I placed it on what I assumed was the designated table white cloth calligraphy sign, beautifully stacked gifts. And that's when Aunt Denise swept in lavender perfume, first judgment, a close second. "Oh, Sharon, sweetheart," she trilled, tilting her head the way people do when they're pretending to be kind. Actually, Vanessa wanted the gifts arranged by family tiers. I blinked. Family tiers. Yes, immediate family in the front, then extended, then everyone else. She fluttered a hand toward the far corner of the yard. "Could you place yours back there by the drinks? The photographer wants the aesthetic tight." "The aesthetic? Of course." I swallowed. The sting nodded and carried my gift across the yard past clusters of laughing relatives who barely noticed me. The gift area she'd referenced turned out to be a single folding table wedged beside a trash bin, holding 2 sad packages, a wrinkled wine bag, and a dented box of chocolates. Mine looked almost too dignified next to them. Still, I placed it down gently. I kept my composure. I had learned long ago that in this family, grace was my armor. I turned to head toward the main seating area, but Vanessa intercepted me mid-step. "Oh," she exclaimed, her smile sharp as a paper cut. "Sharon, didn't see you come in. You look comfortable." It was 92 degrees. I was wearing a sundress and sandals, but somehow being comfortable sounded like an accusation. "Thanks," I said calmly. "We actually set aside a little spot for you." She lifted her hand like she was about to unveil a prize on a game show. "Right over there, behind the DJ booth." A single plastic lawn chair sat wobbling on uneven grass, backed by a stack of Solo cups and a cooler half filled with melting ice. No shade, no table, no nearby seating, not even a decoration to make it seem intentional. Overflow seating. I stared at it, then at her. "That's for me." She nodded brightly. Everyone wanted to be here, so space was tight. I knew a performance when I saw one. She wanted me to look small, disposable, an afterthought in the carefully curated story of her life. I walked to the chair anyway, sat down. The plastic groaned under me like it wanted to apologize. Around me, laughter drifted from well-dressed guests, glasses chimed, and the DJ wiped sweat off his forehead without acknowledging my existence. I wasn't just at the edge of the party, I was at the edge of the family. Then, as I shifted to cross my legs, I heard Vanessa's voice drift clearly over the music directed at the DJ with that same sugary smirk. "That's the area for extras." Extras! The word hit harder than it should have. It wasn't rage that filled my chest. It was a cold, sharpened understanding. Something that had been accumulating for years finally clicked into place. I wasn't a guest. I was a prop, a placeholder, a non-essential background figure in a story they'd written without me. And they were finally saying it out loud. I looked at Vanessa framed in soft lights and surrounded by bridesmaids who adored her curated perfection. She didn't look back. She didn't have to. She assumed I'd absorb the insult silently the way I always had. But something inside me shifted, a soft crack, a quiet awakening. I stood up, walked past the DJ booth, past the swaying clusters of relatives, past the velvet rope Vanessa installed for aesthetic purposes. My sandals sank slightly into the grass, each step steadier than the last. I headed for the back corner, snatched my gift off the folding table, and turned toward the exit. I didn't make a scene. I didn't raise my voice. I simply walked away from the life where I had been assigned the role of extra. I was nearly at the gate when Nathan appeared, breathless dessert plate in hand, his eyes round with panic. "Sharon, wait. What are you doing? Where are you going?" I held the espresso set against my hip and met his gaze with a level calm I didn't quite feel. "Just taking back my extra gift." "What?" He blinked confused. "What does that even mean?" "Ask Vanessa," I said. "Or your mom." They seem pretty clear on where I belong. His mouth opened to protest, but I stepped around him. I didn't wait for an explanation that would fall short. I didn't look back at the stunned faces or the glittering decorations or the perfect life staged under curated lighting. I walked out of my aunt's backyard and into the humid evening air, leaving them to their performance. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the climax. Not even close. This was just the moment the curtain finally lifted. Because what came after everything that unfolded in the weeks to come would unravel the family hierarchy they'd spent years constructing, and I was nowhere near finished. What they didn't understand yet was simple. Extras don't get endings. But authors do, and I was finally ready to write mine. For the first 48 hours after the engagement party, my phone stayed silent. No one texted, no one called, no one asked if I got home safely. Not my mother, not Nathan, not Aunt Denise, not one of the countless relatives I'd grown up celebrating holidays with. It was as though my absence had corrected some aesthetic flaw in their family portrait. On the third morning, my phone buzzed at last. It was my mother. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't even hesitate before diving straight into her usual script. "Sharon, what on earth did you do last night?" She demanded, her tone sharp, with that familiar blend of embarrassment and scolding. Denise is beside herself. She spent so much effort planning that event. My fingers tightened around the mug in my hand. I didn't do anything except leave. "You stormed out?" "I walked out," I corrected. "Over a chair." I closed my eyes. It wasn't just a chair. "Oh, sweetheart, you always make things bigger than they need to be." She sighed. "Vanessa is under a lot of pressure with the wedding. You know, brides can be particular. Don't take everything so personally." That sentence, that tired sentence I'd been spoon-fed since childhood. Don't take everything so personally. Translation, let people treat you badly and smile through it for the sake of family harmony. For the first time, I didn't swallow it. I didn't nod. I didn't apologize. "I'm hanging up," I said. "Sharon." But I pressed the red button hands, trembling, heart hammering. It was the first time in my life I'd hung up on my mother. A quiet rebellion, but a necessary one. By day 5, the entire incident had been reframed in the family group chat as Sharon's emotional flare-up. Someone joked about me being too sensitive. Someone else wrote, "At least she didn't knock over the dessert table." Laughing emojis. I muted the thread. I didn't cry. Not yet. That would come later. Back then, I felt only a cold, distant ache, like someone had carved out a space inside me and left it echoing. 2 weeks passed, with no contact. I threw myself into work, anything to keep myself from replaying the humiliation, the loneliness, the dismissal. My boyfriend Ethan checked in constantly. He brought me takeout, made me tea, suggested we go hiking on weekends. He didn't fully understand the deep-rooted dynamics between me and my mother's side of the family, but he cared enough to try, and that meant something. One afternoon in mid-July, as I sat on the balcony folding laundry, a text appeared. "Nathan, hey, can we talk?" My stomach tightened. I stared at the message for a long time before typing a simple "sure." He called within minutes. His voice was cautious, as though he were approaching a wounded animal he didn't want to startle. "Look, Sharon," he began. "I've been thinking about what happened at the party." That comment Vanessa made, she shouldn't have said that. I should have stepped in. I just didn't realize it hit you like that. Something inside me twitched. Hit me like what? Like you felt excluded." I almost laughed. "I didn't feel excluded, Nathan. I was excluded." A long pause. I could hear him swallow. "I get it," he finally said. "And I'm sorry. Really. Vanessa's been under a lot of stress with the wedding. She didn't mean anything by it." There it was. The pivot. The excuse. The prioritization of Vanessa's feelings over mine again. I felt my jaw tighten. "If you want us to be close, Nathan, you can't keep pretending things don't hurt just because they're inconvenient to acknowledge." He said something vague about wanting fresh starts and moving forward. The kind of words you say to smooth out the surface without fixing the foundation. Then, right before hanging up, he added, "Oh, by the way, Vanessa's planning a getaway next month before the wedding. Kind of like a joint friends trip since she doesn't want a traditional bachelorette party. You should come." He listed the people going. They were all from her life, her best friend, her co-workers, one of her bridesmaids' boyfriends. I wasn't close with any of them, but I said yes. Not because I wanted to, because I wanted to believe Nathan was trying. The trip was a disaster. We stayed at a fancy resort by the coast, the kind of place with infinity pools and cocktails served in hollowed-out pineapples. On the first night, as we lounged on sunbeds by the pool bar, one of Vanessa's friends, a tall, smug man named Brad, asked me casually, "So how do you know everyone here?" "I'm Nathan's cousin," I said. He snorted. Seriously, I thought you were someone's plus one. I stared at him. No, I'm family. He blinked as though he'd misheard, then shrugged and wandered off bored. I tried to brush it off. But the next morning, as I got ready in the suite, I overheard Nathan on speakerphone in the next room, thin walls, my bad luck. Yeah, it's mostly close friends, he said. Vanessa's college girls, her coworker Mark Brad. Oh, and Sharon's here too. She's my cousin. Kind of a last-minute invite. My hands froze midair. Last-minute invite. I'd bought my plane ticket weeks ago. When I stepped into the living room, Nathan gave me a bright smile. Ready for brunch. I nodded, but inside, something small and fragile cracked. It was nothing dramatic. No explosion, no confrontation, just the final crumble of a bridge already strained. That night it got worse. We went to a rooftop bar with velvet ropes and pulsing neon lights. Nathan had reserved a booth 5 seats. We were 6. Brad dove for the end cushion. Vanessa sat in the middle. The others filled in without hesitation. No one shifted. No one noticed me standing there. I dragged a bar stool to the edge of the table and pretended I preferred it that way. No one said a word. The next morning, I skipped the group breakfast and wandered into town alone. I bought a croissant at a little bakery and ate it while staring at the ocean, the waves crashing against the rocks like they'd been waiting for me. On the flight home, Vanessa slept with an eye mask on. Nathan scrolled through Instagram. No one asked how I felt. No one asked if I had fun. I texted Nathan later that evening. Thanks for the invite. I'll see you around. He sent a thumbs up emoji. That was the moment I knew I was done. Done trying. Done bending. Done shrinking myself to fit into a space that was designed to keep me small. And yet the universe had more to show me. Much more. Because 2 months later, when the wedding invitations went out, I learned just how far they would go to keep me invisible. And how far I would go to reclaim my place. The wedding invitations went out on a Wednesday. Everyone made a spectacle of it. My mother called me within hours, her voice bubbling like she'd swallowed champagne. Sharon, you should see the invitation boxes, velvet gold seals, little handwritten notes from Vanessa herself. Mine is already on display in the dining room. That's nice, I said, even though I could picture it perfectly, her treating an invitation like a trophy. Evidence she still had a place in the hierarchy. You'll get yours soon, she added. Denise said the delivery service was running a bit behind. 3 days later, something arrived. But it wasn't velvet or gold or anything resembling a celebration. My neighbor knocked on my door with a small crushed cardboard box in her hands. This was delivered to my porch by mistake, she said. Got caught in the rain. Inside was a bent, soggy card with ink that had bled into watercolor blotches. The RSVP line was blank. The return envelope was missing. The corners were ripped as if someone had already opened it. It looked less like an invitation and more like a discarded receipt. I stared at it for a long time. When I called my mother to ask what her box looked like, she described hers in breathless detail. Monogrammed chocolates, embossed paper, curated calligraphy. Mine looked like an afterthought they'd tossed to me out of obligation. I didn't cry then. I didn't rage. I simply felt something inside me detach cleanly, like snapping the final thread of a rope that's been fraying for years. 3 days later, I ran into Aunt Denise at the grocery store. Her cart was filled with overpriced cheese and artisanal crackers, the staples of someone who likes hosting but never actually cooks. She spotted me near the produce section. "Oh, Sharon," she said cheerfully. "So glad you're still coming even after everything." Everything, I echoed. Well, Vanessa wasn't sure you'd be comfortable attending after the engagement party, so she tried to keep your invitation low pressure. That's why we sent the simpler one. She said simpler the way people say inferior. I stared at her, feeling a cold calm settle over me. The simpler invite, I repeated. "Oh, sweetheart," she tutted. "Don't be so sensitive. Not everything's about you." For a moment, I imagined throwing the mangled card at her feet. I imagined yelling, crying, demanding accountability. But doing that would have only given her more power, more ammunition, more reason to play the victim. So instead, I smiled calmly. And that was the moment something fundamental in me shifted. I suddenly understood that they didn't want me there. Not really. They wanted credit for inviting me. They wanted to protect their image. They wanted to maintain the illusion of unity while tucking me behind the DJ booth forever. It wasn't neglect, it was strategy. I left the store without buying anything. I drove home in silence, and that night I looked at the crushed invitation one more time, then dropped it into the recycling bin as quietly as if I were deleting a file from my computer. The decision was made. I wouldn't go. The wedding took place in early October. The pictures flooded the family chat sunset photos at a vineyard, Nathan kissing Vanessa under an archway draped with roses, Denise beaming in every shot. Captions like, Vanessa and Nate ever after, and Tower Fairy Tale begins. Not one person asked where I was. Not one person noticed the empty seat they supposedly reserved for me. And when I scrolled through the tagged photos, something hit me with a dull ache I had not been missed. It was like I had ceased to exist. The winter that followed was heavy, too heavy. Not because of one event, but because of the cumulative weight of everything I had pretended didn't affect me. The silence, the dismissal, the humiliation, the years of being told I was too sensitive, that I should let things roll off my back, that I should smile and be grateful for scraps of inclusion. I went to work. I came home. I shut my curtains. I ordered food I didn't finish. Some evenings, Ethan stayed with me, doing the dishes, brushing my hair back when I cried without warning. Other nights, I insisted he go home. I didn't want my sadness to seep into his life. By mid-December, the flu hit me, hard. The kind of sickness that knocks the strength out of your bones. Fever chills, a cough that rattled. I lay on my couch, wrapped in blankets, sweating and shaking, wishing I had family I could call. Someone who'd bring soup or meds or even just sit with me. But there was no one, except Ethan, who came after work with ginger tea and crackers. You need to rest, he said, stroking my hair. Your body's been carrying too much for too long. That night after he left, I cried, not because I felt lonely, but because I realized how long I'd been holding myself together with denial and politeness and the desperate hope that if I was good enough, patient enough, loving enough, my family would finally see me. They never did. And for the first time, I understood maybe they never would. The tears were soft, almost silent, just a slow-release grief spilling out after years of being tightly contained. But grief has a strange way of making room for clarity. By the new year, something shifted. Not dramatically, not all at once, but slowly like frost melting from a window. I cleaned my apartment. Deep cleaned. Scrubbed corners I hadn't looked at in months. Donated clothes I no longer recognized myself in. Finally replaced my broken lamp. I cooked actual meals again. Left my curtains open. And on a whim, I signed up for a pottery class. It felt ridiculous at first. The studio was bright, warm, filled with strangers shaping clay with confident hands, while soft jazz played from overhead speakers. I sat at the wheel with my elbows tucked in, heart racing like I was about to take an exam. But when the clay spun beneath my palms, soft, pliable, stubborn, it felt like something inside me unlocked. It was messy, imperfect, therapeutic. The instructor, a joyful woman named Lana, clapped every time one of us managed not to collapse our bowl. Pottery is permission to be flawed, she said, and to keep shaping anyway. I returned the next week, and the next, and the next. It became my anchor. Then something unexpected happened. An email from a recruiter. They'd seen my portfolio online and wanted to hire me as a freelance consultant on a new product launch. That project led to another, and another. By spring, I had reduced my full-time hours at my office job. For the first time in my adult life, I felt capable, independent, strong. I started journaling, running, cooking. I started smiling again, real smiles, the kind that reached my eyes. And little by little, the numb space inside me filled with something alive. Hope. Still a bruise remained, light faded but real. And one afternoon in late June, something brushed against that bruise. A listing, a real estate listing, for a property tied to my family in the most unexpected way. And when I clicked it, everything changed. Absolutely everything. It arrived in my inbox like any other piece of forgettable spam. A dull subject line. Opportunity. Near Crescent Hill. Motivated seller. I almost deleted it. I almost kept scrolling. But something in the preview text caught my eye. Charming farmhouse property. Needs TLC. Formerly owned by Family Estate. Family Estate. My pulse quickened. I clicked. And when the photos loaded, my breath caught in my throat. There it was. That house. The farmhouse my grandfather had left to all 5 siblings, my mother, Aunt Carol, Uncle Jeff, Uncle Stephen, and of course Aunt Denise. The house Denise had convinced everyone to sign over to her for safekeeping. The one she claimed she'd preserve as a family retreat. The one she locked up, changed the codes for, and stopped inviting anyone to. And now she was selling it. Quietly. Secretly. No social posts. No announcement. No family discussion. Just a desperate little listing buried in an email blast. I stared at the screen, stunned. The photos were heartbreaking, peeling paint, overgrown grass, shutter hinges dangling like broken limbs. The porch railing drooped. The once bright blue shutters faded to the color of old denim. The garden, once full of my grandfather's roses, looked like a graveyard of dead branches. A part of me felt grief. Another part felt fury. And another part, an unexpected part, felt something else entirely. Possibility. 2 days later, I scheduled a tour. The real estate agent, a woman named Tracy, with a clipboard and a permanent look of apology, seemed thrilled someone was even mildly interested. "It has good bones," she said as she jiggled a stubborn doorknob. "It just needs some love." The door finally creaked open and stale air breathed out into the sunlit porch. Inside, the smell was a mixture of old wood dust and neglect. Sheets covered furniture. The floorboards groaned. Wallpaper peeled in long strips. But beneath the decay, there it was. The skeleton of a house that once meant something. I walked through each room like I was walking through someone's memories. My memories. The living room where my grandfather used to sit in his recliner. The dining room where we'd once attempted a disastrous Thanksgiving. The upstairs hallway where my cousins and I would sneak around after bedtime. It wasn't just a house, it was a legacy. And Denise had abandoned it like an outdated accessory. "What's the asking price again?" I asked. When Tracy told me, I nearly stumbled. It wasn't cheap, but it was far below market value. Neglect has a way of lowering worth. But I didn't see rot, I saw potential. Not just for the house, but for something inside myself. "Could you send me the disclosures?" I asked. "Of course," Tracy smiled. "Should I put you down as seriously interested?" I hesitated only a moment. "Yes," I said, "seriously." Ethan listened quietly that evening as I sat cross-legged on the couch, explaining everything. She lied to everyone, I said. About keeping it for the family. About preserving Grandpa's legacy. She waited until we all stopped asking, then she let it fall apart. And now she wants to cash out quietly. He rested a hand on my knee. "So what do you want to do?" That question echoed in my mind long after he left that night. What did I want to do? I didn't want revenge. Not really. I wanted justice, restoration, a reclamation of something they had erased from my life. And something else, I wanted to build something of my own. Something meaningful. A place where people weren't treated as extras. A sanctuary for creativity, for community, for anyone who had ever been overlooked. By morning, I knew exactly what I wanted. I wanted to buy the house. The first hurdle was financing. My savings, boosted by months of freelance work, were solid, but not enough for a full cash purchase. But the minute I mentioned the idea to Rami, one of my classmates from pottery, who had a background in real estate investing, his eyes lit up. "You want to turn it into a community arts space?" he asked. "That's actually brilliant." "It fills a need," I said. "This town has nothing like it. You'll need renovations, permits, business licensing." "I know," I said, "and I want to do it right." He leaned back, studying me. "You've really thought this through." "I've been thinking my whole life," I murmured. "Now I'm finally acting." Within a week I had, and a contractor's quote, a small business loan, pre-approval, design sketches for studios, meeting rooms, and a pottery workspace. And encouragement from Lana, who offered to host workshops once it opened. It all felt surreal. I wasn't the quiet cousin anymore. I wasn't the invisible guest. I wasn't the overflow seat at someone else's party. I was building something. When I submitted the official offer, full asking price, quick closing, Tracy called me the next day. "They accepted." "Already?" "Yes," she said, sounding almost as surprised as I felt. "The seller seems eager to finalize things." Of course she was. Denise never did like dealing with consequences. When the paperwork arrived by email, I scrolled through the disclosures until one line caught my eye. Owner Denise Mallory. Seeing her name in bold letters was like feeling the final click of a lock. This was real. This was happening. This was mine. I signed. Renovations began immediately. The crew trimmed the wild grass, repainted the peeling siding, repaired the porch beams, ripped out outdated fixtures, replaced the kitchen counters, reinforced the stairs, installed new lighting, cleaned out the attic. The transformation was almost spiritual. I was reclaiming more than a house. I was reclaiming my narrative. By midsummer, the farmhouse no longer looked abandoned. It looked alive, warm, inviting, exactly as I'd envisioned. I renamed it the Orchard House Collective, a community arts hub, a place where locals could take classes, a place for studio rentals, a place for families to gather, a place for kids to learn pottery and painting, a place for creative misfits to feel seen, a place I would have needed years ago, a place people like me still need now. And all the while I told no one in my family, not even my mother, because timing mattered, and fate handed me the perfect opportunity. Aunt Denise announced a family reunion in August. at her farmhouse. Her emails were full of exclamation points and flowery promises. She had no idea. I didn't correct her. I simply coordinated with the local arts council and scheduled our public open house for the exact same afternoon. A collision course, silent, inevitable, perfect. On the morning of the reunion, as the porch gleamed under the summer sun and children dipped paintbrushes into bright colors, I stood quietly, coffee in hand, watching the driveway, waiting for the Lexus. And when it finally turned the corner, crawling cautiously up the gravel like it still owned the land, I felt something inside me settle. Not revenge. Not triumph. Just peace. Because today, Denise would learn something she had never believed. Extras don't stay extras forever. Sometimes they become the authors. By the time the clock crept toward 1:57 p.m., Orchard House was already alive with the hum of voices and the gentle clatter of paint jars and clay tools. The August heat wrapped around us like a warm blanket. Cicadas shrilled in the trees, children laughed near the art tables, an acoustic guitar drifted through the air from a teenager performing under the apple trees. I stood near the porch steps with a cup of iced coffee, greeting guests, answering questions about upcoming workshops, pretending I wasn't waiting for anything at all. But I was waiting. I knew the sound of that engine before I even saw it, the slow crunch of tires climbing the gravel, cautious and unnecessarily dramatic. Denise never drove fast up any driveway, even one she no longer owned. The silver Lexus rolled into view, shimmering under the sun like a self-important jewel. In the passenger seat, I saw Nathan squinting at the crowd with his brow knitting tighter by the second. Even from here, I could feel his confusion. The car slowed to a stop. For 10 seconds, no one got out. Then Denise emerged, wearing white linen pants, an oversized sun hat, and sunglasses so large and tinted they practically swallowed half her face. She looked like she'd stepped out of a summer catalog, curated, polished, ready to preside over a reunion she assumed would center her. Nathan climbed out next, staring around as if the world had shifted without warning. "What is this?" I heard him ask as his gaze swept across the handmade banners and the bustling open house. Denise didn't answer. She simply stiffened, spine straightening, jaw clenching ever so slightly. Her eyes darted across the signs, the crowd, the coffee stand, the paint-splattered tables, the children dipping brushes into neon colors. She was processing, calculating, panicking. She hadn't noticed me yet, not until I stepped forward. "Welcome to the Orchard House Collective," I said warmly. They both froze. Nathan blinked as if trying to reconcile what he was seeing. Denise remained motionless like a statue carved out of denial. Nathan approached me first. "Sharon, what's going on here?" "A community open house," I said. "We host one every month." But he gestured to the porch, the yard, the people. "Why is it here?" I took a slow sip of my coffee. "Because this is my property." Denise reacted like I had slapped her. "You're what," she demanded, marching toward me with her hat bobbing. "This is my house." I pulled the folded document from my back pocket, the deed perfectly crisp, my name printed right beside the words, "Owner of Record." "Not anymore," I said. "You sold it, I bought it." Her hand trembled as she snatched the paper from me. She scanned it, her face draining of color beneath layers of bronzer. "No," she whispered. No, you lied." "You accepted my offer," I replied evenly. "Your lawyer processed everything. I simply didn't feel compelled to send out a press release about it." "You bought it behind my back," she hissed. "You sold it behind everyone's back," I said. "Fair is fair." Around us, I could sense people catching on family, arriving in clusters, hearing raised voices glancing at the deed, whispering to one another. Aunt Carol paused mid-step, her eyes widening. Uncle Jeff removed his baseball cap. Cousin Lauren mouthed "holy crap" under her breath. Denise's lips tightened so sharply they nearly disappeared. "You manipulated this whole thing just to humiliate me," she accused. I held her gaze. "No, I bought a property you abandoned, and you scheduled a family reunion at a place you no longer owned. The timing was your choice, not mine." Nathan ran a hand through his hair. "Wait, you've been working on this, renovating, turning it into all of this." He waved at the crowd. "Yes," I said. He looked down at the paint-speckled grass, at children happily smearing colors onto canvases, then back at me. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Because no one asked." My voice softened. "And because I didn't need their permission." His expression shifted, something like realization, something like guilt, but he said nothing else. Behind him, cars kept arriving, relatives climbing out, holding Tupperware and folding chairs, expecting picnic tables and family photo ops. Instead, they found artists sculpting clay parents, admiring their kids' crafts, and a cheerful volunteer handing out iced coffee brewed by a local roaster, partnering with our collective. I didn't need to tell them what happened. They understood. Aunt Carol reached me first, drawing me into a hug so tight it startled me. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. Uncle Jeff clapped me on the back with a booming, "Good for you, kiddo." Cousin Lauren squeezed my hand and murmured, "About time someone stood up to her." Every acknowledgement felt like a salve I hadn't known I needed. Meanwhile, Denise stood frozen on the porch, clutching the deed as if reality might change if she held it tightly enough. Eventually, she straightened her hat, lifted her chin, and turned toward her car without another word. Nathan trailed behind her, his shoulders sagging. She left the driveway just as slowly as she'd arrived, but this time the engine didn't purr with superiority. It sputtered with defeat. Not everyone left. The rest of the family stayed. Most drifted toward the refreshments, toward the art booths, toward conversation. They asked about the collective, the classes, the plans for the upcoming fall workshops. My mother approached me last. She looked smaller somehow, like a balloon that had finally lost its tension. "Sharon," she said quietly, voice thinner than I'd ever heard it. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Would you have listened?" I asked gently. She opened her mouth, closed it, then nodded. "I didn't realize," she began, then paused. "I didn't realize how much they've been hurting you." I exhaled slowly. I needed space to heal, and while I was healing, I built something. She reached out and touched my arm. "I'm proud of you, truly." It wasn't perfect. It wasn't an apology for years of dismissal, but it was a start, a small, tender first step toward a better relationship. I accepted it. As the open house continued, I found myself helping a little girl stamp her initials into a clay pendant. She grinned up at me, proud of her creation. "You made this?" she asked. "Yes," I said softly. "All of it." Ethan appeared beside me, slipping his arm around my waist. He pressed a gentle kiss to my temple. "You did it," he murmured. "I did," I whispered back. "Not for revenge. Not for show. For me." By sunset, the open house was still lively, warm, filled with energy and laughter. I walked out to the porch, watching the golden light spill across the yard, my farmhouse, my creation, my reclaimed legacy. And for the first time in years, I felt whole. Not because I'd taken something away from them, but because I'd finally given something back to myself. I wasn't the extra. I wasn't the overflow seat. I wasn't the invisible cousin. I was the author. And this time I got to write the ending. Long after the last guest left the open house and the final streaks of sunset faded from the sky, I found myself alone on the wraparound porch of Orchard House. The wood was warm beneath my hands, still holding the day's heat. Crickets hummed in the grass. Paper lanterns swayed gently overhead, their soft glow casting golden circles across the yard. It should have felt quiet, empty, echoing. But it didn't. It felt fuller than it had ever felt under Denise's ownership. For the first time, the house breathed. I sat on the porch swing, exhaling deeply, letting the events of the day finally settle. The reveal, the shock, the confrontation, the support from family I never expected. The look on Denise's face when the truth finally cut through her curated world, that was something I would not soon forget. Ethan stepped out onto the porch, 2 glasses of cold water in hand. "You're still up?" he asked, settling beside me. "I don't think I could sleep if I tried." He chuckled softly, adrenaline, more like peace, mixed with disbelief. He handed me a glass, and we sipped in comfortable silence, the kind of silence that comes only after a storm finally breaks. "Sharon," he said gently, "I'm proud of you." I let the words sink in. "I'm proud of me too," I admitted, surprising myself with how easily the sentence slipped out. For so long, pride had felt like something reserved for other people. For Nathan, for his siblings, for the golden ones, the chosen ones, the ones who always had an audience applauding. Tonight I didn't need an audience. My applause came from within. The next morning, sunlight streamed across the newly restored porch, revealing details I hadn't noticed before. Tiny flecks of paint on the steps, a forgotten paintbrush tucked into the bushes, a child's clay figurine perched crookedly on the railing. I picked it up smiling, a crooked little cat with one ear bigger than the other, a child's masterpiece, imperfect but earnest. A small symbol of everything Orchard House was meant to be. A space for the imperfect, the overlooked, the quiet ones, the ones who had been told to sit behind the DJ booth. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. I hesitated before opening it. "Vanessa. I hope you're happy. You humiliated my future mother-in-law in front of the entire family. Pathetic." I stared at the message. The same old tone, the same condescension, The same belief that she held the megaphone and I was expected to stay quiet. But I wasn't quiet anymore. I typed 2 words. Please block me. Then I blocked her first. Ethan laughed when I told him. Straightforward. Necessary, I said. We drove into town shortly after to grab coffee and pastries to restock the refreshment table. The local roaster recognized me immediately. Hey, Orchard House lady, he called cheerfully. Your open house yesterday. Best turnout we've seen at a community event all year. Warmth rushed through me. Really? Oh yeah. Half the town's talking about it. People want to book classes. Some want to rent studio space. One woman asked if you'd host her kid's birthday party. I blinked. A birthday party? He grinned. Welcome to small town success. You're going to be busy. Back at Orchard House, cars were already pulling up. Artists dropping by to set up weekly rentals. Parents inquiring about kids' classes, a couple wanting to discuss hosting an anniversary reception. It felt surreal, but it felt right. By noon, Orchard House had transformed again, not into a gallery, not into a confrontation stage, but into a living, breathing, creative hub. This was what I'd wanted all along. My mother arrived that afternoon without texting first, clutching a basket of muffins the way someone might hold a peace treaty. Can we walk? She asked. We wandered along the edge of the property past the apple trees my grandfather had planted decades ago. The fruit wasn't in season, but the branches still held their shape, strong, patient, enduring. Your aunt isn't speaking to anyone, my mother said. I'm not surprised. She's angry. She's embarrassed, I corrected. There's a difference. My mother sighed. You really shocked everyone, including me. I didn't mean to shock, I said quietly. I meant to reclaim something that was taken. We stopped beneath the largest apple tree, its trunk wide and knotted with age. Sharon, my mother said softly, I'm sorry. It took me a second to process the words. I didn't realize how deep the hurt went, she continued. I thought, you were strong enough to handle the family's rough edges. I didn't see that those edges were cutting you. For years, I'd dreamed of hearing something anything like that. An acknowledgement, a moment of clarity, a sliver of validation. And now that it had arrived, it felt like a gentle balm. Thank you for saying that, I whispered. She squeezed my hand. You don't have to do everything alone anymore. Maybe I didn't. By late afternoon, another unexpected visitor arrived, Nathan. He stood at the foot of the porch steps, hands in his pockets, looking unsure for the first time in years. Can we talk? He asked. I nodded, leaning against the railing. He glanced around slowly, taking in the renovated facade, the laughter drifting from inside, the ceramic pieces drying in the windowsill. You really did all this, he said. I did. And you didn't tell me. You never asked, I said simply. Not really. Not in a way that meant you wanted to know. He winced. I didn't realize how badly Vanessa and my mom treated you, or how long it went on. That's the thing I said. You weren't supposed to realize, not if it meant challenging them. He looked ashamed. I'm sorry, Sharon. I studied him. The cousin I grew up with. The boy who used to chase fireflies with me. The teenager who defended me once when I was 12 and scared to swim. The man who had gradually shrunk into Vanessa's shadow without noticing. Thank you for apologizing, I said softly. But this isn't about one moment. It's about years. He nodded slowly. I understand. Do you? I asked. He took a deep breath. I want to. I really do. And if you'll let me try again someday, I'd like to be in your life differently. Better. I considered his words carefully. Maybe someday, I said, but not today. He accepted that, gracefully for once. As he walked away, he glanced back at Orchard House, not with entitlement, but with something else. Respect. By evening, Orchard House was quiet again. I closed the windows, flipped the lights off one by one, and stepped onto the porch with Ethan. The sunset painted the sky in amber and rose. The air smelled of clay and lavender, a blend I hadn't known I'd love until it became my life. This place suits you, Ethan murmured. It feels like home, I said. Not the house itself, though I cherished every inch of it, but the feeling. The certainty, the self I had finally found. A self that no one could exile to an overflow chair again. I leaned into Ethan, the breeze lifting my hair as I looked at the orchard, the porch, the future unfolding like a hand finally opening. I wasn't the quiet one anymore. I wasn't the extra. I wasn't the forgotten cousin. I was the author. And the next chapter was entirely mine to write.